Yeah, I think the reason James asked me is because I'm currently leading the efforts of a parent group in Acton to set up what will be Britain's first parent-sponsored academy or free school, if you prefer. And we actually haven't, it's slightly premature for me to be addressing this subject because we haven't yet had the conversation about what the kind of overall ethos and vision of our school is going to be. Someone tipped me off in advance that as soon as you have that conversation, you're pretty much guaranteed to fall out. The parent group splinters, the steering committee collapses, everyone has a different idea. And but we've been putting it off for long enough, and we're actually going to have that conversation in a 6-hour, professionally moderated session next week. So it is something I've been thinking a little bit about. So what is education for? Is it to acquire knowledge, education for education's sake, or to impart vocational, practical skills? Or is it some combination of the two? Horses for courses, or to use the Blairite jargon that permeates the state education sector, pathways to learning. The direction of traffic over the last 13 years, as James said, and stretching further back than that, has been away from traditional core subjects towards more economy-driven, utilitarian, skills-based learning. And perhaps the sine qua non example is Ed Balls' recent introduction of diplomas, which he envisions will be an alternative to GCSEs and A-levels. And for instance, you can do a diploma in hair and beauty. A more popular phrase for vocational skills-based learning is dumbing down. The government likes to boast of the improvement in academic attainment in London state secondary schools as measured by the percentage of students securing 5 or more GCSEs at grade C or above. But one of the reasons for this quote-unquote improvement is that they've introduced vocational courses that are worth the equivalent of more than 1 GCSE. For instance, a higher diploma in hair and beauty is worth 7 GCSEs at grades A star to C. In other words, they haven't actually improved academic attainment, they've just lowered the bar. And if you don't believe me, talk to any university lecturer. Generally, at most Russell Group universities these days, the teaching staff have to spend the first year getting students up to the standard they would have been expecting to be at when they entered the university a few years ago. One of the most tangible manifestations of the failure of skills-based learning is the collapse of social mobility that's taken place in Britain over the past 25 years. The products of Britain's state schools are finding it increasingly difficult to compete with the products of schools like Wellington. When I went to Oxford in 1983, people educated in the state sector like me comprised 65% of the student body. Today it's closer to 53%. According to the Sutton Trust, I'm sure you're familiar with these statistics, the percentage of top newspaper editors, columnists and news presenters and editors educated in independent schools has actually increased over the past 20 years. The direction of traffic is away from social mobility. And if you measure social mobility according to the degree to which the socio-economic status of children is independent of the socio-economic status of their parents, which is a metric known as intergenerational mobility, Britain currently sits near the bottom of the International League table for liberal democracies, below France, Germany, Sweden, Canada, Finland, Norway, Denmark, even the United States. And the effect of this collapse of mobility has been the entrenchment of privilege at one end of our society and the calcification of poverty at the other. Only 20% of the children eligible for free school meals got 5 GCSEs at grade C or above, including maths and English last year, compared to 54% of the general population. And the attainment gap at A-level is even greater. In 2009, you may have heard this statistic too, it was quoted at a recent Conservative Body press conference. In 2009, 175 boys at Eton got 3 A's at A-level. For the entire population of state school boys on free school meals, the total was 75. Imagine it, said Michael Gove, one school having 2.5 times as many boys eligible for the top universities as the entire population of poor boys. Contrary to what David Cameron would like us to believe, it is not where you're going that matters, it's where you're from. But I think there's a larger, more important way in which the drift away from traditional subject-based learning has failed children. It isn't just the physical bonds of society that schools should attempt to liberate children from, but the intellectual bonds. So what's education for? It's not simply to transmit knowledge, but to encourage children to think critically and analytically about the world. to acquaint them with the best that has been thought and said, in the words of Matthew Arnold, so they have a universal standard against which they can judge the values of contemporary society. The purpose of subjects like citizenship and PCHE, which are almost universally taught across the state secondary sector, is essentially to indoctrinate children with the values of the wider society, not to encourage them to question them. Values like tolerance, diversity, mutual respect. Children are encouraged to think that no one set of values is superior to any other, unless they happen to be the values associated with multiculturalism, in which case they're as sacrosanct as religious principles, and the treatment meted out to heretics is far more severe than it is to those who question the prevailing religious doctrine in faith schools, for instance. It's the tyranny of liberalism, the dogma that pervades state education like a secular religion. I think in conclusion, the only form of education that can supply children with the tools they need, both to overcome the circumstances of their birth and the prevailing values of society into which they're born, is what's commonly referred to as a classic liberal education. That is a traditional curriculum consisting of English, maths, Latin, the sciences, history, geography, a foreign language, music, art and drama. A fairly narrow academic curriculum, but one that all children are capable of benefiting from. And I'll give you an example of the kind of school I'm talking about, the kind of school that provides the sort of education that every child in the UK should have access to, and which has really inspired me and my group to try and set up a similar school in West London. And that's the Renaissance Arts Academy in a place called Eagle Rock in East Los Angeles. And it was started by two women who were very unhappy with the support their daughters were getting at their local high schools. They were both keen on classical music, and they weren't getting anything like the sort of support their parents thought they should be getting, their mothers. So these two very impressive women, both former showbiz veterans, set up a charter school in East LA, and every child at the school has to learn a stringed musical instrument which they have to practice for an hour a day. That's their only homework. And every child has to learn Latin through to 18, and apart from that it has a pretty much exactly the classic liberal curriculum I've just described. Over 50% of the children at the Renaissance Arts Academy are eligible for free school meals, or its American equivalent. Less than 50% are Caucasian, the majority are Hispanic American and African American. The area it serves is an extremely challenging, underprivileged, socially deprived area. It's in East Los Angeles, and it consistently gets the best results of any school in the East LA School District. It is consistently oversubscribed. It is an absolutely outstanding school. And I'll leave you with these words from the website of the Renaissance Arts Academy. The purpose of the classical curriculum is to free students from the tyrannies of unexamined opinions and inherited prejudices. It endeavours to enable them to make intelligent, free choices concerning the ends and means of both public and private life. And that, I think, is what education is for.